and welcome to Telewizja Republika. This war lasts for more than 10 years. It was back in 2014 when Russia attacked Ukraine, it illegally annexed Crimea, and since then the intelligence world knows that this is a true game, that this is not just a thing that can be described as a tension between Russia and Western states. It is not a reset policy anymore. The whole fairy tale of a cooperation between West and Vladimir Putin as an innovator who is trying to reinvent Russia as a modern state, well, he's a bit different. He kills one or another opponent as many other dictators all over the world do, but generally he's a reasonable man we can deal with. That's the way that Polish political parties used to think about this man back in 2008, 2009, when current Prime Minister of Poland, Donald Tusk, was trying to build a relationship and dialogue with Russia as Russia is. But also Hillary Clinton and her administration was trying to make a reset policy, an official policy of United States. Well, Germany was building Nord Stream and Nord Stream 2. Gerhard Schröder was a big friend of Russia, not only getting his money from the coffers of Vladimir Putin, but also some other assets and benefits, not mentioning the children. Yeah, the children he was adopting based on this long-standing friendship between him and the Russian rulers. Since 2014, as we now know, the U.S. intelligence agency, the U.S. counterintelligence agencies, as was published by 60 Minutes and by the Insider, is running an operation where U.S. diplomats and U.S. members of CIA officers or FBI officers were targeted by the Russian GRU unit, a unit that was used in infamous attempts of murdering Skripal, the same unit that was active in Montenegro when it was trying to topple the government on the day of accession to NATO, the same unit of GRU that was trying to kill people in Bulgaria, the same unit that was organizing bombs and military depots that were blown up in Czech Republic, the same unit that was chasing the Putin's enemies on the territory of Germany was also targeting specific and each and every person of the personnel of American diplomatic representations and offices all around the world. The things that we've heard last week are staggering. Using beams of energy that was transmitted straight to the ears and brains of officials of USA in the embassies and in other places was just an hostile activity of Russian Federation. The target of those operations, the targets of those operations were people who were instrumental from the perspective of US of running operations against Russia. What we found out when we've seen the materials published by 60 Minutes and the Insider is that there were certain assets of Russian military intelligence in United States that were actually caught red-handed. Those people were recognized by the FBI officials. Those people were recognized and caught, basically, by the American counterintelligence and intelligence community. So for many, many years, United States knew very well what is the true nature of Russian activity and Russian hostility against US, which gives us a lot of information about the reasons for which CIA organized and started cooperation with the Ukrainian military intelligence that was published, revealed about 3 weeks ago in famous New York Times piece. That gives us a kind of a knowledge that is far deeper than the common knowledge that we could think of. One thing and one pattern is the official line of claims made by the politicians. Another one, parallel, is the real reality and the real nature of hostility of Russia against the United States. And this is very important because it means that for a very long time, the idea of resetting relations between Russia and the United States was obviously impossible to execute. And this gives us hope that those people who are in charge of patrolling the political borderlines between Russia and the US, between the states like Russia, which is being ruled by the post-communist regime of FSB and KGB, and free world on the other hand, gives us hope that one day the people will come to the conclusion that we cannot withdraw from helping and supporting people who, like people in Ukraine, are fighting for their own freedom, which basically means that they are also fighting for our freedom. Because the Western civilization, we all are on Russia's target list. Not only people who are fighting this war in the places, in the trenches, on the border between Ukraine and Russia. You can join us on rakracon.com, that's our website. You can leave us your email. We'll get back to you with a report from the front lines of the ongoing war against the West. My name is Michał Rachonia. This is Rakracon. And we roll in.
Are you ready? 3, 2, 1, go!
Now, to talk about the current situation in Ukraine, Joe Lindsley, this time not on Monday, on Tuesday, but still, actually from the first line. Joe Lindsley is now in Kyiv, as he is for more than 3 years, all the time in Ukraine, reporting from the front lines of this ongoing Russian aggression against Ukraine. Joe, welcome back.
Michał, hello from Kyiv. I took the overnight train from Lviv, arriving early this morning. And, you know, today I was running around Kyiv midday, and it's a beautiful 70-degree Fahrenheit day. In the parks, there are people walking. It's such a lovely city. And, you know, even amid the war, you see what a nice place, you know, how nice and livable Ukrainian cities are, even though, you know, at any moment, of course, something could hit. And I would say there's a good story. Today we have the news of a Ukrainian drone hitting a Russian. It seemed to be a facility that manufactures Shahed drones within Russia.
1,200 kilometers away. It makes it quite a difficult and sophisticated operation of Ukrainian military intelligence.
Absolutely. I mean, this is a huge success, and you know, coming out just a few weeks after we had those reports that were leaked, that the White House was not happy, that the White House has not been happy with Ukraine, with Ukraine's recent attacks on Russian oil and energy infrastructure deep within Russia. Ukrainians have been doing this for about a month now, sending drones near St. Petersburg and now way deep into Russian territory. And in that Financial Times story, Ukrainian officials said that they had been told by the White House, stop doing this. The White House later denied it. Other Ukrainian officials denied it. But if we look at the pattern of what we've heard from Washington, including, you know, when I talk with people there, Washington has time and time again discouraged Ukraine from hitting Russian places in the Crimean Peninsula, which is sovereign Ukrainian territory, but especially within the Russian Federation. And we see Ukraine with this new sense of, well, they can't afford to play nice. They can't just wait for Washington to finally one day give permission. After 2 years, it's pretty clear that permission's not coming. And, we see because of that, I mean, there's Republicans, and, this is now up for debate again, but will they support continued aid for Ukraine? But one Republican criticism has been, well, how long is this going to go on? And I think with a move like this, Ukrainians are trying to show, look, we can do big things. When you give us tools, we can achieve great things. Look what we can do with our own homemade drones hitting these targets deep within Russia.
Actually, the thing that you just mentioned, that Washington and the White House was not really happy about Ukraine organizing an escapades like this and attacking Russian targets deep inside Russian territory. We are referring to the article by New York Times 2 weeks ago, published two weeks ago. And it looks like the pattern is that Ukraine and Ukrainian military intelligence, if it organizes an operation far beyond the borders of Russian Federation, it simply does not inform officially United States, but it looks like United States as a country, White House administration is quite happy about not being informed. Looks like this is a convenient way for both sides. As we know now, the cooperation between secret services lasts at least for 10 years by now.
Well, and it's an important story because it gets missed. Ukraine. Okay, Russia has had major attacks on Ukrainian infrastructure and supply depots and other things these past several weeks. In fact, a few days ago, I was in the Carpathian Mountains hoping to have a little bit of respite after about 2 months in Kyiv under frequent attack. And I woke up on Sunday morning at 6 a.m. to explosions nearby, even there in western Ukraine. The Russians have been targeting perhaps gas depots and perhaps other types of supply depots there. So the Russians have been doing that with precision. Kyiv city is still suffering with frequent power outages, but Ukrainians are having significant successes, and the things that are totally ignored. For example, I think it was over the weekend, Elon Musk was tweeting about the tragic waste of life. He was speaking about Ukraine trying to push back against Russia, and if you read what Elon is saying, it sounds like all hope is lost. In fact, in this tweet on his platform X, he said. Elon Musk said, whether Ukraine loses all access to the Black Sea or not is, in my view, the real remaining question. This is horrible to see those words because that sounds like Ukraine is losing in the Black Sea when the reality is the opposite. A Russian ship, after more than a couple of hours in the Black Sea, is in an exceedingly dangerous position. Just a couple of weeks ago, just over a week ago, March 24th, Ukrainians took out yet 2 more Russian landing ships. The kind of ships that, Russia doesn't have a lot of those, the types of powerful ships that Russia could use if they wanted to take Odessa. And they're trying to push this narrative that they can take Odessa and Kharkiv. But Ukraine is methodically every fortnight taking out more and more Russian ships with their sea drones. And so, the question is, can Russia put a single ship in the Black Sea? That's a question that people like Elon should be asking.
Yeah, we got the report from British intelligence claiming that Russia lost 1/3 of its Black Sea Navy. It's huge because, as you always mention, Russia lost it to states that simply do not have, at least now, effectively, a navy. Still, it lost 1/3 of navy of its own. But on the other hand, we know that despite those kind of losses, despite heavy losses and big price for each and every success, military success like those in Avdiivka or Bakhmut from the standpoint of the Russian barbaric system, the price of those military gains is so huge that for any regular civilized state, those prices in terms of price of lives of the soldiers, of the servicemen, would be unacceptable. And yet for Russia, it's not a problem at all. On the other hand, we know that Russia lost a big number of tanks. However, it can still deliver more, maybe not that modern, maybe not that good, but the quantity replaces quality, and Ukraine has to face it. What is the way that the Ukrainians think about it right now? Because this is a war of attrition, and the potential of Russia is still 2-3 times bigger than Ukraine.
Well, we do see, I mean, every time Ukraine pries open a window of opportunity, that seems to be when the West goes into paralysis. You know, we had, starting from last summer when that grain deal expired, brokered by the UN and Turkey, and, you know, so Ukraine could not attack any Russian ships in the Black Sea because there was a deal to let Ukrainian ships export grain. Well, when that expired, it opened the opportunity for Ukrainians to actually fight and to fight back. And since then, they've had these great successes month by month in the Black Sea, successes against taking out a number of Russian planes. And if we can, you know, that was not in a vacuum. During those months, last fall, Russia had a decrease in missile attacks, in long-range missile attacks upon Ukraine. And then through the entire winter, everyone was predicting, you know, that the winter was going to be worse than last winter. And there were no major successful Russian attacks on Ukrainian infrastructure until spring began. This is phenomenal. So the Ukrainians created an opportunity, but the weapons didn't arrive from the West to seize the moment and to move for victory.
So,
so what happened?
Joe, where are we right
Russia
now
had
with
time.
this? Where are we right now with this lack of supply of weapons? Because we know, you and I discussed it many times, most of the political discussions around the subject of Russian war in Ukraine are mainly discussions about the internal American debate about the money being granted or no by American Parliament. But where is the line? Where is the point of no return? How far are we from a situation in which Ukraine will simply lack effective weapons to hold orcs behind the borders of Mordor, or what they control right now as effectively as a part of Mordor?
Well, remember, I mean, in those first days of the full-scale invasion, you know, people were making Molotov cocktails. They still have that ability. So whatever it comes down to, and even Elon Musk said in his tweet, he said there's no chance of Russia taking Western Ukraine because the local resistance would be so strong. But what he totally misses, not knowing anything about this country, that resistance would be equally strong, if not stronger, in a place like Kyiv. I mean, they've already, in 2014, they kept the Russians out. In 2022, and now that city is, you know, they're prepared for anything. And this is why Russians are just trying to delete it by bombing it. They know that they can never invade such a city because it's armed to the teeth, and the people will not permit that to happen. So the reality is, Ukrainians will keep, you know, with ingenuity to find a way. I know many people working on drone technology. Thanks to listeners to TVP and to my daily show on WGN Radio, we're delivering more anti-drone backpacks in the coming days. You know, Ukrainians are doing everything they can, sort of, you could say, in the micro to medium level. But I think if Ukraine can show members of Congress in particular, look, every time you send weapons here, we have used them precisely and swiftly to good effect. And I mean, it's actually worked every single time. But then there's no follow-up. There's no leadership from Washington saying, oh, when we sent 17 ATACMS, Ukraine used them. They turned the situation around. They took out 2 Russian air bases on Ukrainian soil. Well, then why was there should have been a clamor at that point for, hey, let's send more, because every single time we send this stuff, it works. And instead, that stuff is not sent, and Ukraine gets blamed for this dragging on, so to speak. Well, when in fact, if we just use, I think, some principles of logic, we'd see it could go much more quickly if these weapons actually just arrived. And you know, and it has benefited America. I mean, 2023 was the best year ever for sales of American defense products. So the few products that come to Ukraine show the world the might of this American military tech. And you know, if some, I think we just have to get people in Washington out of the narratives and the headlines that people like Elon Musk are reading. I mean, it's astounding how little they know. When I talk to people in Washington, you know, even people with security clearances, I can tell because they want to know what's happening here. Their knowledge of what's happening in Ukraine comes from the headlines. It comes from the mood. Yeah, it doesn't come from any kind of reality.
Speaking of headlines, there is something that puzzles me in a way. We are discussing here on Telewizja Republika. We used to discuss it in TVP, so yeah, we do thank for our former TVP viewers for supporting your effort and your fundraising to help people get stuff to the front line. But this war continues since 2014. In a way, the Russian war against the Western political community, political well, let's put it this way, last even longer. But what was published a couple of days ago by several outlets in US, it was 60 Minutes. There was a very interesting text by the Insider about using of a sophisticated weapon systems against American diplomats, against CIA and FBI officials. We've heard a big story about the Russian operatives being chased on the highways of United States with the special devices. We know and we see and we got to prove that the American intelligence community was aware of this kind of hostile activity, attacking of the diplomats and of the operators of the secret services for many, many years in a way that we actually thought was only the subject of the, maybe not the science fiction movies, but definitely action movies and spy movies. It's reality. And this reality is a part of a war that Russia wages against United States and its most important agencies like CIA, FBI, Department of State. What do you make of this story in context of what you know and what you see every day in Ukraine?
Well, I have some personal experience of that because several years ago, I was living in Philadelphia, and I was invited on a free trip to Moscow and St. Petersburg. It's a common thing for journalists to get junkets like that, and I ended up not going because the FBI contacted me, and it turns out that the alleged Russian mysterious cultural organization in Washington that had been running these trips for about 15 years was part of the KGB. And they bring, and this is very important as we look at who's not voting to support Ukraine and who's quietly supporting Russia. They brought so many Americans several times a year, entrepreneurs, politicians, business people, to Moscow, and who knows what kind of cameras they had in the hotel rooms and what kind of situations they got people in. The FBI told me that they had put an end to this. I asked, what should I do if there was a Russian woman, Anastasia. I said, what should I do when she calls me back? And they said, she won't be calling you back. We got her. But the leader of that group from the Washington base did escape to Russia. But you think of all the people that went through this, and certainly they have dirt on these people. The FBI asked if I would go to spy. I said, no, thanks. I just went to a Notre Dame football game instead. So I'm glad, because that enables me, that would be a big problem here in Ukraine. But if I had been there, interestingly, I think in a Ukrainian city, you're safer when there's no Russian attack, not only because there's very little crime, but because you don't have the amount of Russian spies that you would have in, say, Paris, Prague, New York, and Washington. They're crawling. You always have to be careful, even here, but they're crawling all over these places. And yeah, they think they can push the world around. I mean, look, last week in Moldova, the neighboring nation to the south of Ukraine, there were air raid alarms, I think, for the first time since World War II. And in Poland, you've been scrambling your F-16s multiple times now. The Russians are sloppy, and missiles are flying left and right, and they have no regard for it. And every time they think they can get away with something, they keep pushing. I remember when the Greek prime minister was in Odessa with Zelensky, and the Russians, sent a missile very close by. They hadn't done that when foreign leaders were visiting, but now they're starting to because they feel emboldened. And so this is where the people have to push back. With strong words, like the mayor of Paris last week, Anne Hidalgo, she said Russians will not be welcome in Paris, her city, for the Olympics. She doesn't really have the authority to prevent that, but making a clear stance that even Russian athletes, even if they're under a neutral banner, are not welcome there because the behavior of their country. But while those words are, powerful and important, the main simple thing is air defense to places like Odessa and Kyiv, Patriot missile batteries and other means, and long-range weapons, Taurus from Germany, attacking from the U.S.
Taurus,
and other
we
countries.
just heard that, and it was published online. We've seen a couple of references to this on X or Twitter, whatever you call it. The Taurus actually are not going to be produced anymore because there is no demand for those long-range missiles. Well, there is a huge demand from Ukraine. I mean, Ukraine wants to buy as much as possible of those flying stuff. However, Germany claims that no use in producing it. There's no need. People do not want to use it. What do you make of it?
We see the true colors. And I think a lot of, some of this is, there's Russian money going back for a long time in the oil business. And when I was in the mountains over the weekend, I was hiking and I saw the pipeline from Russia. It's amazing to think of gas and oil still flowing from Russia through Ukraine, even as Russians try to commit genocide here and slaughter people. We had the 2-year anniversary of the Bucha massacres just a few days ago over Easter weekend, and I touched that pipeline. I'm like, how is this evil thing still allowed to be here? And it's because at the end of the day, for the global elite, the big money, big gas, big oil rules. And they'll put Ukraine on their websites and they'll wave the Ukrainian colors because they know it's popular.
But the crazy thing is also Ukraine gets a share of it. Russia gets a share of it. I mean, it's unthinkable of, but that's exactly what is happening.
Yeah, and meanwhile, you have the regular people who are, and this is what also gets missed. The people that insist on being free are the regular Ukrainians, and they're not regular; they're everyday heroes. But they're the people that stood in the Maidan 10 years ago, and they're the people fighting at the front lines, or making drones underground and doing everything they can. So that's whatever the politicians might say and do, even here, this is the story of people who insist on being free, who don't want to ever live like Russians. They don't want to live in a society where you can't have your own religion or your freedom of speech, and where everyone has to worship Putin. So this is the story of the people. And then meanwhile, I think as we look at what's happening in Washington, I think we can clearly say, the Republican refusal to stand for freedom is a lie to everything that meant to be Republican or American. And the Republicans in Washington are giving cover to the cowardice of the White House. The White House doesn't seem to want to have to be, just like the Germans, the German leadership, they don't want to be bold and say, hey, look, we've seen what Ukraine can do. We've got many good successes. Let's push for victory. They lack either courage or imagination to do it. But the Republicans, by their blindness and cowardice, are giving cover to the White House and its cowardice. And this is kind of the normal Washington game. But we see that now missiles are flying outside of Ukraine as this might begin to spill beyond these borders.
What happened to the Republicans of Ronald Reagan, who basically just said that Russians should tear down the wall, and he actually made it happen. Great hero of not only of United States, but a great hero of Central Europe, of my state, my home country. Ronald Reagan got a couple of monuments here in Warsaw, and that's the reason for which he's basically a politician who is a U.S. president who is considered one of the best U.S. presidents in the history, at least by my fellow countrymen. Joe, thanks a lot. Maybe before we go, can you refer shortly to the needs of your fundraising project? What can we all add to your list? What can we try to help you send to the people who are fighting for freedom? You got 1 minute.
Well, in a few days, Michal, thanks. I'll be on another delivery trip to take these anti-drone jamming backpacks, which Ukrainians are constantly developing and refining so that they can, be ahead of the Russian technology. But if, one soldier wears this backpack, it can protect a group of about 12 guys from incoming FPV kamikaze drones. And, as I've said before, we've heard reports Russians are not only using the kamikaze drones to blow up Ukrainians, but also to drop chemicals. And I know people who've gotten sick from that. So these drone jamming backpacks, each one is about $2,500. And we welcome support at UkrainianFreedomNews.com. You can buy one on your own, and we'll try to send you some special gifts from the front. Or you can just chip in any way you can. So this, in a few days, I'll be taking a batch of about a half dozen of these, plus some other specialty anti-drone equipment, taking it right to the guys at the front and on those dangerous but beautiful highways of Donbass. So we welcome support at UkrainianFreedomNews.com, either the tax-deductible or the PayPal option. Tax-deductible will be used to protect medics and people working on search and rescue and evacuation.
And you can find also Joe and his project on Substack. You can leave your email and be in touch with Joe Lindsley, who's staying for those 3 years right now in Ukraine, witnessing the war and helping people who are fighting against the Russian aggression against the state. Joe, stay safe. We see each other next week.
Yeah, my shirt today says in Ukrainian, malo po malo, little by little, step by step. That's the key. So until next time.
Step by step, we'll kick Ruskies out of the territory back to their crappy murder. Joe, see you.
Dziękuję.
Dziękuję. You can leave us your email here on this website, which is rackracon.com, as the name of the show. That's our Substack. So you can leave us your email. You can leave us your contact, become our subscriber, and get reports that we try to produce from each and every important information that we try to cover, not only from the war of Russia against Ukraine, but in a broader sense from all the front lines of the ongoing war against the Western civilization. Stay safe. We come back tomorrow. Ciao.